I am the most beautiful woman in the capital. Everybody adores me. I'm not kidding. I unilaterally beat the prince and brought the incident before the emperor. The emperor stared at my face for a long time and said to the prince, "Why are you so fussy about it?" I smashed the vase that the prince had bought at a high price. He looked at the corpse of the vase, clenched his fist, and looked at my face again. "Forget it," I said to Zui Yi. "Your daughter is naturally beautiful and charming, like a flower and a jade, with extraordinary talent and extraordinary talent." Zui Yi. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Zui Yi is my maid. At first, I didn't want her to be my maid. As soon as I saw her, I remembered every early morning class I attended and every homework assignment I had to finish. I said to Zui Yi in a deep voice, "I am a lesbian." Zui Yi. What a coincidence. Me too. I was shocked. I'm homophobic. Zui Yi. I have a very good relationship with my elder sister. My elder sister sneered at me. "I want this hairpin. Who do you think you are? You are just a concubine's daughter." I smiled at her. "Sister," the elder sister said stiffly, "it's just a broken hairpin. Just take it if you want." See, I said I have a good relationship with her. My mother often says that I am so arrogant because I rely on my good looks. Me? Mom, if you have this face you will be arrogant too. My mother hugged me and sighed. "I wonder who will dare to marry you in the future." I said obediently, "It's okay. There are always people who are not afraid of death." My mother. I am famous because of my good-looking face. The emperor granted me permission to study in the palace. As a result, I became even more famous for gossiping in class, sleeping with my head covered with a book, and pretending to be a mutant to scare my classmates. Every time I made a mistake and reported it to the emperor, he would look at my face, then look at the faces of the other troublemakers, weigh the pros and cons for a moment, as if he was making a decision. Then he would say to others, "Don't be so picky." Others. Over time, no one was willing to sue me anymore. Although everything I say and do is ridiculous, my reputation is still there. As long as I smile at people, no one can refuse me. I boasted to Zui Yi proudly. "There is no one your young lady cannot conquer." Zui Yi commented, "To serve others with beauty." I. What? Me? Then be honest. Have you been taken down by me? Zui Yi was silent for a moment. "Yeah," I said. "Judge a person by his appearance." Zui Yi. I have a very good relationship with all the princes and princesses. Specifically, they like to invite me when they go out to eat. Me? Are you all secretly in love with me? Second prince. Prince? What? The third princess said calmly. "No. You can get free food if I call you." It turns out that I am just a free tool. The fifth prince set up a game. He opened a new bookstore in the capital, specializing in selling some interesting storybooks. Soon, he called us all over and proudly spread out the money he had earned on the table. I don't need to say much. I want to ask everyone here, have you ever seen so much money? There's no need to make a fuss. I looked at the few pieces of silver on the table and said, "With so much money, do you want to die?" The second prince, "Just spoil him." The fifth prince was unanimously ridiculed by everyone except me. He came to me with tears in his eyes and said, "Elwan, you are still good to me." I asked expectantly, "Will you give me half of the silver?" The fifth prince looked at me coldly. "Your character is just as ugly." What? We went to the fifth prince's bookstore for team building. I picked out a relatively normal one from a pile of colorful and strange little notebooks. Rebirth. I am the most beautiful woman in Beijing. What? I silently recited the core socialist values 10 times. I am very satisfied with my face. I hope that no ungrateful ghost will take over my body. Otherwise I will turn into a fierce ghost and choke everyone to death. I opened the book with awe. A quarter of an hour later, I held the book in my hand and asked the fifth prince, "What kind of things do you sell in your bookstore?" The fifth prince said guiltily, "It was an accident." I grabbed his collar and said, How come I don't know that I have a relationship with the second prince, the third princess, the crown prince Swaya, and you? The fifth prince screamed. Burn it. I will burn it immediately. I said firmly. No. The fifth prince. What? I spread my hands and said, give me 90% of the money you earn. The fifth prince. The fifth prince covered his purse and said painfully, you could have just robbed. I was overjoyed. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I would have snatched it away if you had told me earlier. The fifth prince. What? Although my appearance is impeccable, I still have not developed any relationship with any young man. The fifth prince held a girl's hand. The third princess had a young lover. The second prince and the prime minister's daughter exchanged letters, and the prince's palace had many concubines bestowed by the emperor and empress. I got drunk and wondered loudly, I am so beautiful. Why have I rarely talked to men? The second prince paused while holding the wine glass. Who am I? The fifth prince, who was gnawing on a chicken leg, said, what? I uttered a soft, oh. You guys count. 2. Hearing this, the prince moved away from them calmly. The third princess was also a little drunk. Her eyes were red from crying. She held my hand and said, Elwan, I want to get back together with him. Me? What reconciliation? Reconciliation of what? Reconciliation of who? While the third princess was still not reacting, I shouted, this bitch is in love again. Everyone immediately put down what they were holding and looked at the third princess warily. The third princess felt a little aggrieved. But he is really good to me. The prince advised solemnly. He is not worthy of you. I agreed. Yes. Yes. And he's so strong. What if something happens in the future and we're not with you? The third princess shouted. I am a princess. The fifth prince said disdainfully. Very strong. Just SOSO. Let's go 19 to 19. What? I looked at the fifth prince's fair skin and thin wrists, and asked politely, what kind of 19? The fifth prince held his head high and said, one punch from him would kill me. I said gently, according to what you said, Qin Shang and I will split the money 30 to 70. Qin Shang was a military general of the current dynasty. He had outstanding martial arts skills and was praised by the world. The fifth prince was horrified. You. He looked me up and down and shook his head. I'm not saying anything bad about you, but you look like you can't carry anything on your shoulders or lift anything with your hands. I put my hands behind my back and said, he hit me 3 times. I hit him 7 times. The fifth prince stood in awe and said, it seems that you have already grasped the essence of this prince. The third princess made a fuss again, talking about how good her previous lover was. We gradually became numb from the initial advice. I even started to agree. You're right. It's the right thing for a man to do. Just bear with it and it will pass. The third princess. What? The third princess paused and said, but I am a princess. Me? You may be a princess, but he is a man. The third princess noticed something was wrong. What's wrong with him being a man? The fifth prince came over and added fuel to the fire. All men are like this. You should obey him and listen to him in everything. This way you won't have any conflicts. The second prince added fuel to the fire. I support your reunion. Sissy. You must learn to control your temper and be more generous. The prince nodded silently. The third princess. What? The third princess was so angry that she flipped the table. Bullshit on his father. Who the hell does he think he is? Do you think he should restrain himself? The noise was so loud that the shop owner came running in and yelled, what are you doing? The prince stood up skillfully and took out money to pay compensation. Unexpectedly, the shopkeeper asked for a huge sum of money. 50 taels. The fifth prince exclaimed in shock. 50 taels. Are you robbing me? Do you have 50 taels in this store? The third princess didn't care to be sad. Oh, how much? In the chaos, someone said, let Ailwan go. What? I was pushed in front of the store owner. I held the handkerchief and nodded softly. Do you really want 50 taels? My eyes were full of sparkle. And the shopkeeper blushed and said repeatedly, "No, no. In fact, it doesn't cost so much money. Just give me 1 or 2 taels." Young lady. After the prince paid, I left the restaurant under the reluctant gaze of the shopkeeper. The 5th prince asked me, "Why did you do that disgusting thing just now?" What? The 5th prince snatched my handkerchief and imitated my previous action. Then his eyes widened. "Elwan, why is there oil on the handkerchief?" I said calmly, "Because I was just wiping the oil off the corners of my mouth." The 5th prince, "Me? Although I am extremely beautiful, I still need to eat." I shook my head and said solemnly, "It's all because the roast duck leg was so fragrant that I couldn't help but eat a few more bites." Xiaowu, do you want to fight with that duck leg? The 5th prince, "You only have one face left to look at." I responded, "You're welcome. You don't even have the face to look at me." The 5th prince raised his head and howled, "The most poisonous thing is a woman's heart." The 5th prince said that he was deeply hurt by me and asked me to compensate him for mental damages. What? I calmly took out a copper coin from my pocket and showed the hole in the middle to the 5th prince. 5th prince, "What for?" I said simply, "You're home." The 5th prince picked up the copper coin in confusion and looked at it from left to right. If you want to curse someone, just say it directly. Why are you beating around the bush? The 2nd prince said quietly, "She scolded you for being obsessed with money." The 5th prince. The 3rd princess exclaimed, "Lin Xiaoyu. In fact, even someone as good-looking as me has troubles. For example, groups of men and women came to confess their love to me. Faced with all kinds of confessions, I could only lie over and over again. I'm gay. But this excuse can only force men to retreat. So I stepped up my game. My gender is chestnut cake. Are you also chestnut cake?" Gradually, rumors spread in the capital that I was a lesbian and a homosexual. Many of my admirers not only did not give up, but instead lined up every day to buy chestnut cakes for me. The victim, the 5th prince, had repeatedly expressed his hatred for me. "It's all because of you that I can no longer queue up for cakes at the chestnut shop at the city gate." I listened to the 5th prince's long speech without saying a word, and then asked him, "Why didn't anyone buy it for you? Don't you want to?" The 5th prince. The palace invited young ladies from all families to come into the palace to appreciate the flowers. It was said to be a flower viewing, but in fact it was to select a concubine for the 3rd prince. Logically speaking, the 2nd prince should have been chosen first, but the 2nd prince had no plans to marry. When the emperor mentioned the selection of concubines, he used me as a shield. "I like Ailwan, but Ailwan has no interest in me, so I don't want to marry again." The emperor set his sights on the prince. The crown prince and the 5th prince followed suit. "Your sons are pleased with Alua." What? I tugged at the 3rd princess' sleeve and discussed closely with her how I could put these guys in sacks and beat them up without making any noise. Suddenly, I felt a burning gaze coming towards me. I turned my head and saw the emperor looking straight at the 3rd princess beside me. The 3rd princess also noticed it, and she said in confusion, "Oh." The emperor cleared his throat and asked tentatively, "Do you have a husband you like?" The 3rd princess looked around and then looked at me. She seemed to have made up her mind and said, "I am also pleased with Ailwan." What? Emperor? What? These people stood in front of me in a row and apologized. They put forward the 5th prince, who was the most eloquent, as the representative. The 5th prince said flatteringly, "Ailwan, don't be angry." I was calm and said, "Why should I be angry?" The 5th prince cheered. "Really?" I pointed to the empty space at the back and said, "Stand there and line up. Each person pays me 50 taels." The 5th prince. "What?" The 5th prince humbly asked, "What is the fee?" "Me? I was polluted by you guys saying you liked me in the lobby." 2nd prince. The prince hesitated to speak. The 3rd princess hugged me and argued, "Ailwan, I just didn't think straight." I said expressionlessly, "Do you have any?" The 3rd princess. "What?" The 5th prince pondered for a long time. And I even thought he would sell all his property to raise the money to pay me back. I knew the fifth prince had never had much money. Just when I thought he had turned over a new leaf and was planning to ask him for less, he said, "Aylwin, is this considered living together?" What? The fifth prince said affectionately. "We are all obsessed with money." I put away my overflowing sympathy and said gently, "You, add another 20 taels." The emperor and empress sat at the top, with ministers and their families sitting below them. Those elegantly dressed ladies all kept staring at me, making me feel guilty. The noble ladies in the capital all take me as their role model. They would take note of my attire at every banquet, and then start a trend in the capital. I sat upright, afraid that someone would see me slacking off. Zui Yi stood beside me. She handed me a small note and whispered, "Given by the fifth prince." What? I took the note and secretly opened it. The fifth prince's flamboyant handwriting appeared on the paper, sitting so straight. "Are you worried?" I looked up at the fifth prince and found that I couldn't see him. The seats were determined according to official positions. My father's position was neither high nor low, so our family's seats were in the middle. I wanted to reply, "Go away," but I didn't bring a pen. I began to question where the fifth prince got the paper and pen. Which kind person brings a brush to a banquet? My elder sister coughed a few times beside me. The more I ignored her, the more she coughed. I said obediently, "Sister, did you bring a brush?" The elder sister snorted. "You have to borrow everything from me. Don't you have anything yourself?" As she said this, she asked her maid to bring me a brush. Me? Thank you. I looked at my elder sister deeply. "It turns out that you are the good person who brought a brush to the banquet." I wrote a few words casually, rolled up the note and gave it to Zui Yi. "Me, to the third princess." Zui Yi didn't ask any more questions and handed the note to the third princess as he was told. The third princess was so delighted that she asked a palace maid to take a brush and write something. Then she sent a palace maid to pass the note to the second prince. Finally, after a lot of twists and turns, the note came into my hands again. "Fifth prince, sitting so straight. Are you worried about something?" Me. "Fuck him." The third princess. "Fifth brother, you pay so much attention to Aylwin. Are you secretly in love with her?" Second prince. "He loves it very much." Prince, why is Aylwin so gentle today? The fifth prince. "Are you more gentle, Dad, or go?" I wrote down another sentence. "Even my breathing is gentle," and was about to pass it to the third princess, but the emperor intercepted it. I didn't dare to breathe, and just looked at the other perpetrators in silence. Although I couldn't see their faces clearly, I could strangely guess their expressions. The emperor read the note hesitantly. "Sitting so straight. Are you worried about something?" It was visible to the naked eye that the fifth prince disappeared from his seat at the speed of light and hid under the chair. The emperor was still chanting, "Fuck his father." I really want to escape. I looked at the empty seat of the fifth prince in the distance and wondered if I could also hide under the chair. When she heard the third princess' words, she covered her face with a handkerchief, lowered her head and ate frantically. But she was the youngest princess, and she was the only one who called the fifth prince fifth brother. So when the word fifth brother was uttered, everyone knew it was her. The third princess faced the gazes from all directions, smiled awkwardly, puffed her cheeks, and said vaguely, "Eat. Why don't you eat?" Everyone. The emperor studied the note for a while and said, Why do I see no third prince? Logically speaking, we should have a good relationship with the third prince. We are of the same age, about the same age, and grew up together, so we can be called childhood sweethearts. But unlike us, the third prince is a shady man. When we were made to stand in the classroom as punishment for falling asleep, the third prince stared at us gloomily from the corner. When we were caught and scolded by the queen while running around the palace, the third prince was staring at us gloomily from the corner. Over the years, no matter what we did, the third prince would just sit in the corner like a mushroom, drawing circles with a gloomy face. The third princess once asked me, "What is the third brother doing?" I tried to form the words. Twisting, crawling, creeping darkly. The third princess. What? As the emperor was talking, he began to look around. Where is the third prince? A muffled voice came from the corner. My son is here. Emperor, Emperor, what are you always doing in the corner? Only at this moment did we see the appearance of the third prince clearly. He was pale, of medium build, with bangs covering one eye. It has a very strong smell. Not sure. Let me wait and see. Emperor. The emperor ended the topic in due time and chose to restart the topic. Have you ever seen this year's top scholar? As soon as he finished speaking, a figure walked in from outside the hall. The man bowed to the emperor and said, Your Majesty, I am sorry for being late. I hope Your Majesty will forgive me. He was wearing a red official uniform, which made his skin look extremely white. He stood there coldly and looked very handsome from the side. Many people were stunned, including me. I caught a glimpse of the third princess' eyes, which were almost shining like laser lights. I tilted my head, intending to take a good look at the number one scholar's face, but I saw him glance in my direction. The milk cake I had just picked up rolled to the ground. I said with a blank face, Isn't this guy my ex in previous life? The top scholar only took a glance and then looked away. My elder sister stared at me intently and said disdainfully, You are so grown up that you can't even hold a milk cake. The emperor had a very pleasant conversation with the top scholar and introduced him to other ministers. For a moment, everyone forgot about the incident of the small note. I saw the fifth prince let out a long sigh and slumped on the table like a dead fish. The third princess was choking and desperately trying to drink water. The crown prince and the second prince were talking about something together, and the third prince was still drawing circles with his charcoal pencil, while no one was paying attention. I took away the remaining plate of milk cake and said to my elder sister, Sister, I'm going to feed the fish. Sister, what? Sister, what did you take? I lied with my eyes open. Fish food. Without waiting for my elder sister to react, I pulled Zui all the way to the pond in the imperial garden before we stopped. I stood by the pond and fed the fish in silence. Zui wanted to say something several times but stopped herself. Finally, she couldn't help but said, Miss, a fish's life is also a life. I stood by the pond and grimly fed the fish. Not long after, the third princess came looking for me. She held me tightly and said, Elwan, that number one scholar Siejin. The third princess said excitedly, Mary, I want to marry him. What a love-brained person who never changes. The third princess kept chattering beside me until she saw the fish in the pond turn over and suddenly stopped talking. Elwan, did you poison it? I came to my senses, looked at the fish I had harmed, and was shocked. Fish are also lactose intolerant. The third princess and I had even decided where to bury the fish and what to engrave on the tombstone. But they just shook their tails and came back to life. The third princess and I squatted by the pond and stared at it for a long time, and finally came to the conclusion, it's an act. Me? It's more realistic than what you just acted. The third princess. I broke the milk cake, hesitant and undecided, wondering if Siejin was the same Siejin from my previous life. I took a deep breath and put my arm around the third princess's shoulders. If you took the initiative to break up with your ex for an extremely ridiculous reason, and then met him again many years later, what would you do? The third princess asked cautiously. How ridiculous is it? I hesitated for a moment and said, they are of different genders. How can they be together? The third princess and I stared at each other for a while, and were interrupted by the fifth prince's voice. Elwan, why did you sneak out without calling us? I looked up and found that the fifth prince, the crown prince and the second prince had all arrived, and the third prince followed behind them. The third prince saw me looking at him and said slowly, Father asked me to come. I couldn't care less about him and solemnly repeated what I had just said. If you took the initiative to break up with your ex for an extremely ridiculous reason, and then met him again many years later, What would you do? The third princess patted me on the shoulder and said, I will ask around just like you. The prince's expression changed. Elwan, do you have an ex? The fifth prince shook my shoulders desperately. Oh, you have an ex. Who? Which hero? I was dizzy from the shaking. And I heard the second prince say intermittently, could it be Sejin? I said calmly, you know too much. Zwaye. Silence you. I looked at the group of people in front of me, and a strong sense of powerlessness rose in my heart. There are so many people but not one is reliable. I went to the third prince and asked, where's your charcoal pencil? I had never spoken to the third prince before. He looked at me in surprise. His light-colored lips pursed tightly, and he spoke after a while. Are you going to join me too? As he said this, he handed me a brand new charcoal pencil. I straightened my skirt, squatted beside the third prince, and followed him in drawing circles in a bleak manner. The fifth prince came over, looked at me and sighed. Alas! I continued drawing circles. The fifth prince raised his voice and sighed deeply. Alas! I changed direction and continued drawing circles. When the fifth prince saw that I ignored him, he sighed loudly and exaggeratedly. Alas! I couldn't stand it anymore. So I threw a charcoal pencil at him and said, if you make this noise again, I'll call the police. The third prince was stunned for a moment. My charcoal pencil. Finally, I apologized to the third prince and promised to draw circles with him often in the future. The fifth prince sobbed beside him. It's going to rain and my mother is going to get married. The third princess grabbed me and refused to let go. Elwan, how did you know Sejin? You've never even held a man's hand. So how could you have a relationship with him? I said seriously. It's a long story. The fifth prince came over and said, let's make it short. Me? Actually, I'm not a human. The fifth prince. What? The third princess. What? I said in all seriousness. I am a golden tabby that has been practicing for 1,000 years. One day, I met Sejin. The third princess really believed it. And she asked, and then what? I made up nonsense. He abandoned me after he passed the imperial examination. I refused to accept this. I reversed time and space and lived my life again. I want to take back everything that belongs to me. The third princess. The fifth prince. Elwan, please publish your book in my bookstore. I have already thought of a title. It is called The Golden Gradient and its Ex-No. One scholar. Me. It should be called Parents' Love Story. The fifth prince. What? I simply concluded. I chased him. The fifth prince exclaimed. What evil did Sejin do that you would take revenge on him like this? Me? Did you see that pond? The fifth prince said in bewilderment. I saw it. I stole this fish from the queen's palace one by one. I said kindly. Then go in and talk to these fish. The fifth prince. What? The fifth prince's face turned green. He racked his brains to think of how to refute me. Suddenly, a pair of hands were placed on his shoulders. The fifth prince turned his head and cursed. How dare you put your hands on my shoulders? Standing behind the fifth prince was the newly crowned top scholar Sejin. He turned his head and looked at me past the fifth prince, which made me feel guilty. I didn't know if he was really Sejin, or if he just happened to have the same face as my predecessor Sejin. I was just about to pretend I knew nothing and test the waters a little, when I heard Sejin think for a moment and say to the fifth prince, it's your ex-father. I thought expressionlessly. Damn. Who else could it be but him? Why is Sejin still haunting us even in ancient times? The fifth prince. What? Sejin raised her eyes to look at me. Jiang Wan. Long time no see. I froze for a moment. Long time no see. It's been a long time indeed. I died in my previous life and was reborn in ancient times. It has been 18 years now. Sejin and I have been online friends for 10 years. I added Sejin when I was in elementary school. At that time, he was a normal elementary school student, and I was a noble elementary school student from the Zhang'ai family. I tried to persuade him to join our Zhang'ai family and create a better future for the family. But Xie Jining refused to obey and forced me to quit the Zhang Ai family, retire and start a new life. We somehow became familiar with each other and chatted almost every day. Although most of the time I was the one talking and he was the one listening. I don't have many friends in real life, but in my heart he is my best friend. We have always maintained the good rule of not meeting in person, not making voice calls or sending photos. Later, I went to college and met a cool and handsome guy. I was so shocked by his good looks that I went crazy with Xie Jin and boasted that I wanted to pursue him. Xie Jin said that she could pursue him. At that time, I didn't know what he meant by pursue. I just thought he was encouraging me. So I took the first step towards college, the first time I took the initiative to pursue a boy. My roommate told me that this handsome guy usually doesn't talk to people and shouldn't be approached by strangers. So she asked me not to be too emotional when pursuing him, so as not to make him sad. I said heartlessly, "It doesn't matter. I just liked his face." I asked for the handsome guy's WeChat. After adding him, I couldn't think of an opening line no matter how hard I tried. So I solemnly typed 4 letters. CPDD. Handsome guy. My roommate sighed and said that the handsome guy would definitely delete me. But the handsome guy allowed me to live on his list. At first, in order to establish myself as a hardworking and diligent person, I got up at 5 a.m. and sent a message to the handsome guy. "Good morning /Rose. I only lasted 3 days before I couldn't get up anymore. On the 4th day, I slept until 3 p.m. When I looked at my phone, I found that the handsome guy had sent me a what? At 12 p.m. I managed to catch up with the person in just 1 month. My roommate threatened to cut me into pieces, and I started to brag to Xie Jin. I have a partner now, and I don't want to talk to people who don't have a partner anymore. Xie Jin. But soon I discovered that Xie Jin was the handsome guy, and he already knew that I was Jiang Wan, whom he had known for 10 years. I didn't question Xie Jin why he didn't tell me. I just quickly sent him a message. "We are of different genders. How can we be together?" Then I deleted all of Xie Jin's contact information and chat records. Xie Jin held me back and said, "Elwan, I'm sorry." The 5th prince no longer cared about being taken advantage of by Xie Jin. He wanted to take his ears off and stick them on me to eavesdrop. "What's going on? Tell me quickly." "Me? Oh, you have nothing to be sorry for. In fact, so much time has passed that I can no longer remember what my emotions were at that time. When I saw Xie Jin again, I just felt embarrassed." Xie Jin asked me, "Can you give me a chance to explain?" I changed the subject. "Did you come here just to see me? Is there anything else?" Xie Jin was silent for a moment. His Majesty asked me to find the 3rd prince. The 3rd prince was still upset that I had thrown his charcoal pencil away, and was throwing pebbles at the pond, vowing to kill the fish. He looked up when he heard me and said, "Looking for me?" Xie Jin hummed. "His Majesty asked me to ask you if there is a woman you like." The 3rd prince glanced at me, and this familiar look set off alarm bells in my heart. As expected, the 3rd prince hesitated for a while and said, I. Then Jiang Wan. Here we go again. Who will take care of them?" Before Xie Jin could speak, the 5th prince answered, 50 taels. Alua. 50 taels. What? The 5th prince was heartbroken. Elwan. You can't be partial to one and treat the other differently. You said this in front of your predecessor. Give him another 50 taels. I only asked the 3rd prince for 30 taels. I said earnestly. 3rd prince. You deserve better. The 3rd prince murmured. But, me? Not the best like me. The 3rd prince. The 3rd prince. The 3rd prince returned to the corner and rotted away. Xie Jin asked me, "Do they all like you?" What? Me? How is it possible? Before she finished speaking, I saw Xie Jin pursed her lips and said, Elwan, you are so welcome. After being rejected by me both explicitly and implicitly, Xie Jin just said he would go back and report and left. I pulled the 3rd princess who was watching the fish by the pond and said, "Go back. You've been out for a long time." the third princess said with a bitter face. My legs are numb. What? Me? Then why do you have to squat here? The three dukes' principals said sternly. Of course it's because it's close to you and Xiejin, so it's convenient for me to eavesdrop. I sat back in my seat like a normal person. The elder sister asked suspiciously, why did you all run away? What did you do? I said politely, team building. Sister, what? Looking at the table full of dishes, I picked up my chopsticks as if I were master. I just fed the fish for half a day, but none of the milk cake went into my stomach. I picked up a piece of fish with chopsticks and suddenly found that the fish on the plate looked a little familiar. I looked at the braised fish carefully. Like my uncle who caught those fish just now. I thought maliciously that I would take this plate of fish to feed the fish in the pond. The third prince finally refused to choose a concubine on the grounds that none of them were suitable. The emperor was extremely worried. Why? The third prince spoke the truth. I am dark. Emperor. The emperor looked at the gloomy face of the third prince and slowly closed his eyes. I can see it. After the banquet, they dragged me to eat. I was responsible for eating and they were responsible for interrogating. The prince spoke first. Elwan, do you still like Xiejin now? The fifth prince looked at me aggrievedly. Why do you still have an ex? Am I not your best honey? The second prince coughed and asked, how is it divided? The third princess, Elwan, stop eating. Elwan, you've already eaten a round at the banquet just now. And you're still eating. Are you a glutton? I was struggling with the braised pork in my mouth. I have a small stomach. The fifth prince spoke first. Ostrich. What? The situation turned into me chasing the fifth prince with chicken claws and beating him. The fifth prince and I walked around in circles for a long time, making him dizzy. Several other people sat in chairs and watched the joke. I sat back and took another big bite of the meat. I consumed so much energy after just a few bites. This plate of braised pork cost me 300 calories. I roughly told my good friends how Xiejin and I got together. The third princess was incredulous. So the first thing you actually said to him? The second prince continued. How come I was told that you are my mother? I said calmly. What's wrong? The fifth prince held his stomach and laughed. Elwan, why are you chasing people so messily? Me? But I caught up with him. Did you catch up with him? The fifth prince. I asked with concern. Why don't you smile? Are you naturally not fond of smiling? The fifth prince. The fifth prince once pursued a little girl. The girl's name is Xiaoshui. She is very pretty and lively. And she likes small animals very much. Several of us gave him advice and suggestions. And I used all my life's knowledge to develop a perfect plan for him. I repeatedly told him to do exactly what we said and not to make any mistakes. The noble fifth prince took the strategy and went to find the girl confidently. He said, Xiaoshui, today I will take you to buy a puppy. Puppy. Today I will take you to buy Xiaoshui. The fifth prince's vigorous pursuit ended before it even began. The fifth prince held his head and said in agony, Where's my third brother? Where's my third brother? I want to wriggle with him. The third princess looked at me inexplicably and said, You two are like potatoes laughing at potatoes. You are indistinguishable from each other. I dragged out my tone and started to bring up the past. I don't know who is so desperate to get back together with that Siberian baboon-like ex. Is it you, Chen Meiguei? The third princess. The third princess. That's not called an ex. What? The third princess' eyes were as determined as if she was going to the battlefield of World War II. That's a criminal record. According to the third princess, she likes strong men because such a body shape gives her a sense of security. From childhood to adulthood, the third princess's standard for choosing a spouse has always been tall and strong. We never paid attention to it and just thought she was just saying it casually. Until one day, the third princess brought her little lover to us. And we were all silent, seeing that the previous princes were still indignant, wondering what kind of person dared to kidnap their sister. The fifth prince even threatened, When I see that little bastard, I will beat him up with my sandbag-sized fist. After we met, We were all silent. I spoke with difficulty. Tarzan. The fifth prince. The fifth prince lowered his head and looked at himself. Then at his lover. He glanced behind the second prince and said, Cece, your lover is quite big. The second prince was a little panicked. So he pulled me in front of him, turned around and said to the fifth prince, Xiao Wu, where are your fists as big as sandbags? What? Me? Why are you pulling me? The second prince argued, You look like Lin Daiyu. I believe you can uproot a weeping willow tree. The second prince was behind me. The fifth prince was behind the second prince, and the three of us were standing in a row like an eagle catching chickens. The lover sitting opposite me is the eagle. The fifth prince kept looking around from the back, and the second prince couldn't stand it anymore. What are you looking for? Facing the ferocious eagle. The fifth prince smiled shyly. I don't know what he is looking for. Maybe he is looking for a fight. That lover is a very typical male chauvinist. He took the third princess's efforts for granted and enjoyed it with peace of mind. Finally, I have to say, it's normal for women to do this. I put up with his meal, and finally ordered all the expensive dishes on the menu, and asked my lover to pay the bill. It's normal for men to do this. The first lover took out the money angrily, and I took this opportunity to pull the third princess over. Do you really want to be with him? The third princess, who was immersed in love, asked me, Isn't he good enough? Me? Oh, that's good. He looks like he can make people sweep away their lives and become corpses again. The third princess. Later, as we saw that the lover had more and more problems, we kept persuading the third princess to break up with him. But beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. The third princess believed that regardless of the facts, her partner still had some merits. The crown prince and I discussed it together and reported it directly to the third princess mother, Concubine Li. When Concubine Li heard that her daughter was abducted by a burly man, she immediately called the third princess over and said, Divide them. The third princess refused to comply and claimed in tears that she was a rose raised by her partner. Concubine Li told her to get out, called me in, held my hand and said, Why don't you be my daughter? That one is useless. After I went back, I secretly called a few other people behind the third princess back and repeated the third princess words with great emotion. I am the rose he raised with his own hands. It was him. He who picked up the broken me piece by piece. The fifth prince was laughing so hard that he was shaking on the table. The crown prince accidentally bumped into him and he fell to the ground. He didn't even bother to get up and continued laughing while holding onto the leg of a stool. The second prince spat out a mouthful of wine, choking him and causing him to cough for most of the day. The prince reprimanded all of us. How can you laugh at third sister like that? I looked at the prince who couldn't help but smile and asked, So what are you doing? The prince said sternly, My teeth are too hot. I'll expose them to cool them down. What? From then on, whenever the fifth prince saw the third princess, he would affectionately call her Chen Meigui, and I called her Skin Fragment. Seeing that this trick didn't work, I instigated Concubine Li to play the victim. Do as I say. Concubine Li changed her tone and gently held the third princess tightly. After looking at her for a long time, she sighed and said, The child has grown up. It's better to be busy. Be busy. I secretly rejoiced. Once this trick is used, who else can do it? Unexpectedly, the third princess was stunned for a moment. Then she began to cry beside Concubine Li. Whoa, mother, I haven't seen you for a few days. How come you have changed? Have you been possessed by someone? Princess Li, Concubine Li said calmly. Go back to your palace. Chen Meigui. In the end, the third princess was able to break up with the gardener thanks to the prince. The gardener was having an affair with another girl and was caught by the prince, who found evidence and gave it to the third princess. The third princess cried bitterly. How could he do this to me? The other men were unable to persuade them, and they looked at me eagerly, hoping that I could give them some advice. I had to go back to my old ways. I'm not an expert in this area, but I still want to analyze the pros and cons with you. I think breaking up is good. It's a good thing for everyone, especially for us. If you think there's something wrong with it, it's none of my business. As I said at the beginning, I'm not an expert in this area. The third princess. The third princess was frightened by me and hesitated. It seems to make some sense. The fifth prince asked me quietly, "What did you do before?" I whispered back, "Scam." The fifth prince. We went through the old accounts one by one and sat in the box thinking. I sighed softly. I really liked this feeling of